Hey everybody, this is Mr. Reeves with you, and today we're going to be looking at comparing rational numbers. Specifically, we're going to be looking at the fraction form of rational numbers on the number line. Alright, so just a reminder, when you have your number line, right here in the middle of our number line we have 0. Everything to the right of 0 is positive, everything to the left of 0 is negative. So as we are working now through Module 3, what we're going to be doing is kind of combining some different skills that hopefully you've already picked up in the past. So we're going to be adding, subtracting, and multiplying and dividing with positive and negatives. We've done that with integers, but we haven't done it with rational numbers. And then we're going to be adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing rational numbers, meaning fractions and decimals. So we're combining what you have hopefully learned with positive and negatives with what you have hopefully learned with fractions. All right? And just to kind of warn you, those are, for many students, difficult topics, so putting them together can be a real challenge. All right, so we're going to start kind of slow today. So again, we have 0 right here. Right over here, I have positive 1, and over here, I have negative 1. And this number line happens to be marked off in quarters, in fourth units, 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. But of course, the number line has infinitely many different fractions on it. All right. So in fact, I'm going to go ahead, and write a few things on here. For example, 2/4 right here, we could write as 1/2, right? And a negative 2/4 would be a negative 1/2. All right, and then this would be 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. This, of course, would be 4/4. So another way we could write 1 1/4 is 5/4. And then over here would be negative 5/4, right? And then we have 2 and 2 1/4, and so on from there. All right, so let's just talk about some things about fractions, because you're going to be asked, for example, to identify fractions that are closest to 1. So let's talk about what is true about denominators and numerators when you're close to 1. If we just look at the fourths, we have 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. 1 would be 4/4. When you have the number 1, the numerator and the denominator are the same. So the closer the numerator and the denominator are together, the closer you are to 1. All right, so let me say that again. The closer the numerator and the denominator are to being the same, the closer you are to 1, right? So over here at -1, we would be at -4/4, right? Again, the numerator and the denominator are the same. We just happen to have a negative out in front. All right, so when they ask you which ones are closest to 1, look for the denominator and the numerator and compare them. All right? If they ask you what's closest to 0, all right, as you get closer to 0 on the positive side, the numbers get smaller and smaller and smaller. So right here, for example, we have 1/4. Right in the middle of 0 and 1/4 right here would be 1/8, right? See how 8 is smaller than 4? And if I were to do that again, it would be 1/16. Do you see how the denominator is getting larger and larger, but the numerator is staying small, right? So the closer you are to 0, look for a bigger number on the bottom because you're making those pieces smaller and smaller and smaller. So right here again, I would have -1/8, right? And then halfway through there, I would have -1/16. All right, so if they ask you to find one closer to 0, then look for a larger denominator and a smaller numerator. All right, now, just so you know, just a reminder, the further you go to the right on the number line, the numbers get larger, right? And the further you go to the left, the numbers get smaller. So this can cause some confusion when you're comparing fractions. So for example, if I asked you to compare the fraction 1/4 and 3/4. And I said, which one is larger? Well, 3/4 is larger than 1/4. 3/4 is larger than 1/4 because it is further to the right, right? But if I asked you over here to compare -3/4 and -1/4, well, -3/4, take a look at this arrow, -3/4 is smaller than -1/4. Does that make sense? -3/4 is smaller. So it works kind of the opposite, right? So if you know, for example, if I asked you, compare for me 1 1/2 to 2. By the way, right here, 1 2/4 is the same as 1 1/2. Well, 1 1/2 would be smaller than 2, right? 1 1/2 is smaller than 2, or another way to say that would be 2 is greater than 1 1/2. All right, let me do a different color over here just to show these ones. So here is 1 1/2, okay, and here is 2. So 1 1/2 is smaller than 2, or we could say 2 is bigger than 1 1/2. But if I were to come over here and I were to highlight those ones, and again right here, this is -1 1/2. And if I asked you to compare -1 1/2 to -2, all right, then -1 1/2 is actually bigger, right? Because it's further to the right. Again, as you go this direction, it gets larger. Or if I wrote it this way, -2 is smaller than -1 1/2, right? It's smaller because if you look at this arrow, it is further to the left. All right, so again, to summarize, if you're looking for numbers that are close to 1 or close to -1, then look for fractions where the numerator and denominator are close together. All right? If you're looking for fractions that are close to 0, look for very large, the bigger the number on the bottom, while the top stays small. Then those are going to be closer to 0. If you're comparing larger versus smaller, the further you are to the right, the further you are to the right, the larger the fraction. The further you are to the left, the smaller the fraction. So as you go further away from 0, on the positive side, they get bigger. But as you go further away from 0 on the negative side, they get smaller. All right? Okay, so that's how we compare rational numbers on the number line. In my next video, I'm going to look at some different examples from the worksheet that I've assigned. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.